Hello, ODAC fans, and welcome to the first of our ODAC Hall of Fame features. And we have with us here today Missy Ackerman of field hockey and women's lacrosse fame at Sweet Briar College. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, and I'm ready for anything.
Very good. Well, we've got a lot of different places to go ahead and talk with you here. And I think this is going to be the fun part for Brad and I as we get to hear the stories, tell the story of the league. And when we look at, being an ODAC Hall of Famer and the schools this first year got to choose the 50 members that were going into it, with this being the 50th year of the Old Dominion Athletic Conference. So Sweetbriar felt like, picking you and Bonnie Kestner and Jennifer Crispin, they couldn't tell their ODAC story without getting you involved. So just kind of your initial thoughts on being one of the first 50 ODAC Hall of Famers.
Wow. Well, thanks. And I want to thank everybody. I have to say I was absolutely flattered and stunned. First and foremost, certainly Bonnie and Jennifer have been mentors and colleagues of mine, but also the number of women that were at Sweetbriar when I was there. Bonnie put together an incredible legacy of swimmers who were multi All-Americans. Liz McKnight was probably the best athlete that I ever saw, and she was a swimmer, and I couldn't convince her to play lacrosse too. And Katie Hearn, who has been my lifelong friend, who's just an amazing athlete as well. But really, part of the ODAC and recognizing the people that they've recognized. I appreciate being involved and on a list with people who I've considered opponents, colleagues, and people that I've ultimately respected, like Jan Hawthorne and Enza Steele and Coach Mapp at Bridgewater. They're just incredible coaches. So thank
Missy,
you for the honor.
talk about a little bit about your experience at Sweetbriar, right? I mean, you leaned into it a little bit there. Some of the people that you tried to convince to come over and play your sport because they were a hell of an athlete. But talk about your time and your accomplishments there, and then maybe lean in a little bit on Crispin as a coach.
Yeah, thanks. Well, in the 80s, a lot of us landed at Sweetbriar for various reasons. And I am happy that I made that choice. Jennifer, although I didn't meet her at the time, knowing she was working with the U.S. field hockey team, had been a squad member. And when it came right down to it between a couple of colleges, I was confident. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to play sports in college, and that was a bigger picture than, what my major was going to be. That was me at 18. And Sweetbriar was just absolutely gorgeous. Everybody was welcoming, met with a number of people on the team, and the quality of coaching I thought would be second to none. And I wasn't wrong with that. But I was a kid from Maine, and there were only two of us. It was a very different place. People went away to school and went far away to school. So trying to navigate being in Virginia, that was very different, was a challenge. And sport was the way that you communicated with all these new people that you knew. I had teammates who were from Texas and friends from Texas, and you might as well have been from Kenya, for me and what my experience level had been, and it was just an immediate way to make connections. And I am pretty introverted, and it was a way. Athletics has always been a way to come out of that. And at that time, that was also Sweetbriar's had the largest number of students, probably from then until maybe early 90s. And so there were a lot of us and a lot of incredible, very strong, solid athletic performers who ended up there for whatever reason and have gone different directions in their lifetime. But I was really fortunate to have my life intersect with a lot of them. And, I can tell you right now, if I called five people, they would want to go ahead and, if you said, let's put together an alumni game against Lynchburg or Roanoke, we're there. We're ready to go. Because in our head, we were very, very good, much better than, probably we were on paper. But, it was a confident group of people. And, Crispin really inspired that. She let us be We were very much individuals, and we knew that we looked different than other teams. It wasn't just wearing pink and green. She let our personalities really develop and grow, and that was, great for me, and that was great for my teammates as well.
I've got one follow-up for you. I didn't know Crispin was a painter. Did you know Crispin painted?
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's I mean, I think that's one of the defining things for her that will always resonate with me. I think as things became more challenging to her, and she definitely got her competitive spirit and her ability to express herself out as a coach on the field and developing people. I think intrinsically too, she needed, she used that as another vehicle to express herself. And I mean, that activity really just taught me a lot about how you need to keep moving on. And there are so many more components to you. I mean, I love coaching, and it's the greatest job to get paid to do. But, there are people who can't leave it at home and walk away or find their outlet. And that was her outlet, but it also became a way for her to truly express who she was and where she was going as intellectually and as an individual. So it's great. And she's very good. I have her paintings
She is,
hanging
yeah.
down.
She's
Yeah.
got some great pig photos at the Silver Pig
Yeah.
in Madison Heights that are
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's
Well,
great.
I mean, painting has got a little bit of a roots in the ODAC because I think that's what Commissioner Bankston was doing when Dan Woldridge found him to be the first
I
assistant
was. I
commissioner.
was painting walls, not
I was gonna
painting.
say
So yeah.
that's good. It's a good
Not
skill
not
to have.
exact not exactly the same, but yeah, but the other side to things. I mean, we talked the competitive side, we talked the mental health side, the mentoring side, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit more here, but also the sportsmanship piece. And we look at the third Hall of Famer at Sweet Briar, Bonnie Kestner. You touched on her a little bit here, but she's got a sportsmanship award named after her too from
Yeah.
the women's swimming coaches that now has permeated to swimming overall since we added men's swimming, what a little over a decade ago, and now somewhere right in that range. But talk a little bit about Bonnie and her legacy, if you will, about where she is and why maybe that award was named after her for her good nature with the sportsmanship in the swimming world.
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Good nature is everything that you would say about Bonnie. She was the even keel within as a department member and as a colleague, but seeing her with her athletes, I mean, watching swim coaches in general and knowing how they have to get the same kind of performance out of people who are all doing different activities simultaneously but doing different, having different distances and how you communicate when somebody's underwater was interesting and really helpful to watch because she was very methodical and where I don't want to say she was a closed loop. I'm getting off on that, but she had a plan and detail that we would see and would be followed. And, to contrast, Jennifer is really much more about this is where we're going and this is how it's going to open up and follow through, as opposed to hitting certain marks all the time. But Bonnie is probably I'll always know her to be the friendliest face that you're going to see when you come in each day. You're going to get the same response if you ask a question a number of times, but that doesn't mean that that's without passion. She was, she's an intellectual. She's extremely bright. And not that, again, I think I was really fortunate to be around super bright people who just looked at things differently, looked at things from the inside out, but obviously she had an incredible group of talented athletes and brought them much, much, much further along. And, that I just think that says a lot in how many different generations of teams and how many times she came back and took over the team. At least I think twice she came back on an interim basis. And it is not, I can't imagine somebody calling me up and say, come take over my team for a year and see what happens. And she could, and she was successful in doing that. So, and that says a lot to her method and how she was able to get the best out of people.
Want to talk about kind of your path to coaching now, being an extremely successful coach. and mentor, recruiting, whatnot, whatever we want to look at it here. But you have the experiences of playing for and working with people like Jennifer and Bonnie, but then you've got your own playing experience, the ODAC Player of the Year in both field hockey and women's lacrosse, being an All-American in both sports as well. Coaching, as I'm sure you may touch on here, some All-Americans, but academic All-Americans too.
Mhm.
What was it that kind of keyed you into coaching, and what were your main influences about what your style turned out to be?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you know, I don't think my brain had fully developed until I was probably 22, 23. And it was just a natural pathway that I went right after college, worked at a summer camp coaching field hockey and lacrosse, and sort of realized I don't know what I thought Jennifer did, but it was like, you can get paid for this. This is this is incredible.
Exactly.
And so from right after that experience, I had looked for coaching jobs and went a private school route in Boston, and then landed at Smith for a graduate school program. And that's where Jennifer had gone. Lynetta Ware, to bring one out
Oh
of the
yeah,
closet
right.
right there.
Yep.
Lynetta had gone to Smith as well. And so that opportunity paired me with Judy Strong, who had just come off the U.S. Olympic team in the 84 Olympics. This was late 80s, 89, I guess. And so I got to work with her side by side. And Judy was just the opposite of Crispin in so many ways. But but I could see the methods that generated her success. And that was being demanding and having a really high standard all of the time, but also figuring out different personalities and how to make them work together. And Crispin always did that, but Judy had put things in a different perspective of just expecting you to hit certain marks in your performance. And that was the field hockey side. I worked with her in lacrosse as well, and she had played lacrosse, but it was not her thing. So I kind of had free reign. And so, but I had a safety net of a head coach who really listened to me. And a lot of times as an assistant, you don't have that input really quickly. So I feel like I learned a ton from her. I was surprised. I went in thinking we're so different. And probably of all the coaches that I either assisted or, worked alongside after that, really the lessons that I learned from her, and sometimes the lessons that you learn are what I won't do, or I won't do it this way, and then you're coming back to the middle somewhere on that. But I learned a ton, and I'll run into her like every 5 years, and probably don't give her the credit that she's due in some of that. But and again, in the hockey and lacrosse world, summer camps were huge. So you were going and working with a lot of different people. You were constantly picking up ideas from other people and putting them into place with you. But I can say definitively, I mean, I was hooked. I was hooked at camp. Once I figured out that I could actually get paid and maybe pay off my student loans, then I was all in. And I was really fortunate to land at, again, a great college. At Earlham College was my first head coaching position, and had a lot of very unique individuals. So again, having a Sweet Briar background where we were all coming from different parts of the country and having different interests, it was really the same thing of trying to bring people together and probably do more teaching than the coaching side. Um, but it was fantastic, and I went from Earlham and continue to be friends with a lot of those guys today. And then going to Randolph-Macon, was one of the smartest moves that I ever made. I was there at a fantastic time and had great recruiting classes, and some of the people. I would say it to their face. I was just really fortunate to have been able to coach them because they made things very easy and very responsive. And sometimes they were a pain in the neck too. And they know that and they appreciate that. But it was a wonderful place. And I have to say that my colleagues definitely made me a better coach. I mean, I've got all the respect for Jeff Burns, and because we were colleagues, we were coaching side by side, and there is a competitive nature of looking over at the next field. Like, what are the guys doing? What are the, who's doing this or that? And certainly Helmut Warner, who, and Ted Keller, who was the director of athletics when I was there. Ted was
Another Hall of Famer. Yeah.
the Winchester rifle, right?
Yeah.
Was nothing but a gentleman. He was just the greatest guy to be around. But it was a very competitive atmosphere. Everything was competitive, and I loved that and thrived off of that. And but I really felt like it was time to go back to Sweet Briar. So Jennifer. Um, the programs were in sort of different places. I felt like, I'd taken Randolph-Macon as far as I could take them, and it was a perfect time to really spread my idealistic wings and go back and see, all right, what can I do? What can I do with a team like this? That's in a very different place. And I left an ODAC championship team to go back to Sweet Briar, who was in, probably next to the last place or whatever. And that's okay. Those challenges are really good. And it was a good experience to do. So, and then I headed to Longwood from there.
So, I said this to JJ earlier when we were talking about the list. There's probably somebody on this list that's a player of the year in the league and a coach of the year on the league. But if there aren't many. And it's super impressive that you were able to translate your college career playing to coaching and also having success at that level and being recognized by your peers at that level. But then you took a pivot and then you moved away from coaching and, you went to Longwood, as you mentioned. Then you kind of pivoted into a different direction. You mind sharing kind of that life's journey and then
Yeah.
kind of tell us where you are?
Right. Well, I landed at Longwood University, and coached there for 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and said I was very anti-Division One. Like, it's bad, it's just not whatever. And I found that it was at Longwood, it was very different than what I had pictured it being.
Sure.
Recruiting was a lot easier when you've got this many people, this much money, this much, it's so much easier than trying to like be a brush salesman and really get people to your institution. But I also knew, I don't want to say it's a young person's game, but the club system had really changed and recruiting was really, really changing. And I'd always known that I wanted to go into athletic administration, probably because I'd moved a couple of times. It was really all of the assistant athletic director positions are usually filled from within, from externally. So I was kind of coming up with roadblocks at what my next step might be, how to build out some administrative experience. And I was also commuting back and forth to Longwood, which was almost an hour and a half each day. And you just can't do that for a team. So I became the director of athletics at St. Gertrude High School in Richmond, which was a smaller Catholic girls' school. And the draw was that we were about to build athletic fields. So that gave me the opportunity to design, take this amount of space, get as much into it as you wanted. And that was just thrilling to me. Also trying to rebuild a program that had a history of being strong and had sort of fallen off, and to give them some guardrails again and build up success. And having a facility and a place to call their own was a big part of that. But I also know that high school is not, I'm really geared for a little bit more mature audience. And so when Longwood had an administrative position open, I jumped over there, and I knew it was a term position and hoped that it would be a stepping stone back into college athletics. And it was, Case Western Reserve, I left to be the assistant director of business operations and sports sponsorship and marketing, and oversaw four different teams: men's soccer, men's and women's cross country, women's basketball. And so that was sort of keeping my hands in being around student athletes, but having my hands in the administrative side of things. But really the pivot comes from, having a career, thinking that I want to have my own college program. And I really, through a lot of factors, realized, probably what I really love most is being outside all the time, knowing where I was going to be at 4 o'clock, for practice every day, but really looking at being able to contribute to programs that were more sustainable, having a broader range of people be able to enjoy the outdoors and understand the educational aspect of being able to manage a larger piece of property. So right now I'm the assistant director of the university farm for Case Western Reserve, and I'm looking out the window. It's 400 acres. We are a biology field station, so we do research out here. The cross country team is based here. We have snowshoeing, cross country skiing, running, bad dog walking, not bad dog walking, but dog walking. But we have a food program. So our biggest story is we take about 250,000 pounds of food waste from the dining halls down at University Circle, bring them up here. It's 10 miles, but 30 minutes. Create compost, put it in the soil, sell the vegetables back to the dining hall down on campus.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and
Great.
that's, part of the story. So there is, a big picture aspect to what we do. It is challenging because no one's as competitive as I am. It's not like you can say, we need to make more compost than the college down the street, but it's really how, what indicators do we have? How can we do this a little bit better, and how we take the pride in being good stewards of this incredible place that we get to work at every single day.
Well, and I don't think there's any problem with a little bit of competition in charity as well. We do the same thing in the ODAC with the canned food drive that we've got
Right.
going on. It's a friendly competition
Mhm.
amongst each of the schools coming across, and we come up with a number at the end, and somebody wins.
Yeah.
But in the end, it all goes toward a goal, and it's a good goal, and it's
Mhm.
benevolent, and it's for charity, and it all makes sense. So you've got a very clear circle of life thing going on there. And I think if I can be the master of bad segues, circling things around to back to the sports angle here, is that we've talked about coaching, we talked about playing in athletics, with recruiting and camp and whatnot here with the mentoring piece. But the last part that we haven't talked about is something you're also associated with, is the officiating side of the game. Talk a little bit
Mhm.
about your experiences with that, your enjoyment to that, and your contributions on that side of the game. That's certainly a little bit different than either playing or coaching.
Yeah, it really is. So it's the trifecta, bringing it all back together. And I love officiating. I'm not officiating this year for scheduling reasons, but I'd like to do as much as possible to get people who are graduating and getting out into the world to figuring out how to officiate, because we need more. We need a broader age range and who are covering games. But I started doing that from camp, that they had a training seminar and you could get your rating. So I said, why not? And it was a great way. I started out going to high school games to officiate and watch the kids that I was trying to recruit. They wouldn't know that I was there, but it gave me a way to know, who could handle different situations, what their comportment was, how they dealt with things. So it was a very self-serving reason why I went into it. And then just through coaching, there were intermittent periods where my schedule wouldn't allow me to keep officiating, whether it was field hockey or lacrosse. And at different times, I had more time to be able to do that. The two sports from an officiating standpoint are so different. Hockey, you never know who's in control, and you just have to be very, very finite and quick to discern this is what happened. In lacrosse, it's more like checkers. Whatever has the play unfolds, it's bing, bang, bong, and it's going around. So you can, as a lacrosse coach, you see it unfolding like 20 yards away. This is how this is going to play out. And for me, officiating lacrosse, and I've certainly done a much higher level of, like, officiating lacrosse and a bunch of D1 games, that the better they are, the easier it is, because they do what they're supposed to do. And that was always my advantage as a coach. And sometimes it was my disadvantage that someone would say, you are plotting out the game as opposed to looking at what is about to happen. And I mean, that's a fair assessment. But
Yeah.
I think, it is a lot for somebody who's leaving competitive sport and want to continue. There is a competitive side to it. There's a teamwork side. There are three of you. There are the table people. You're in the game at the time. You get to appreciate really strong athleticism and performance. For me, the downside is like sometimes for the coaches, you just want to be like, why did you call that play? Or you're not giving those players what they need right now. Give me, 10 minutes with them or whatever. But it's great. And I think more people need to see that side of it. Like as an athlete, you deal with failure every day and you deal with public failure. You didn't make your shot, you didn't make the catch, you like dropped the ball in front of a million people or whatever, but the layperson doesn't put themselves in that situation. And you have to like to be able to take the heat to do that. But I think those are really important lessons. And I continue to screw up on a regular basis. I mean, we all do, but it's how quickly we adapt and roll with it and, see the next thing on the horizon of what we have to, be ready for. So, yeah, but it's a blast. It's a lot of fun.
I'm trying to remember you on the sideline to know what your interactions were with the officials when you were coaching. Do you mind
Um,
sharing that?
well, you probably need to. I might be fair to say I don't know if I'm in the sportsmanship records at all. I mean, I think it's the person, it's the situation. It's the interpretation. And I'm sure I gave, because I had that much knowledge of officiating, that, like with any conversation, with any argument, there's always one little piece of truth to the other side. And I was probably that one little piece sometime. But also, you know, definitely being in Virginia, I worked with a lot of people, officiating in other sports. So we had another relationship and another level to certain things. But yeah, I wasn't the worst, but I would say I would improve my behavior now.
I
It's a
wonder.
different perspective when you're officiating and you go back to the coaching side, correct? I mean, you
Oh yeah.
see it at a different angle. And
Yeah.
I guess you got to do it maybe a little bit during practice. You probably officiate a little bit during
Right.
practice, but it's
Mhm.
it's much different than applying it in a game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that is prepping your players for the officials was something I spent time on as well too. I'm sure other coaches did that, you would want to know who has the game or in-game adjustments like that person isn't giving you that call. We're moving you to the other side of the field. It can't be all the time like you have to build a bridge and get over it. A lot of it is like, let's see what we can adjust and how we can make this work together because people had their favorite calls. You give me a name and I can tell you what their favorite call is right now. But it's but I think it's part of the game and it's part of the tactical side of things that you have to plan for. But it's also teaching your team that you have to be resilient and you have to adapt and maybe you change your game for this game. So, but yeah, there were definitely some more heated moments, more animated moments.
Those can be forgotten. Those can be
Right,
forgotten. Listen,
right.
one thing that can't be forgotten is the legacy that I think you left, not only at Sweet Briar, but on the ODAC. So we want to say congratulations again on your Hall of Fame honor. And we're honored to have had you as our first guest in these Hall of Fame features. So we wish you the best. And the last word is yours.
Well, again, thanks so much, and I really am appreciative. There are so many deserving people out there, and I think it's wonderful that the ODAC is doing this to recognize people. But I want to thank you both because having been in D3 collegiate athletics, the ODAC puts on a premier show as a host and where the all of the different colleges have gone and how well they're represented across the country. And it's always wonderful for me to say that I played in the ODAC and how special it is to me. Gotta love the Blue Ridge and what's going on.